Tigran Hamasyan is an Armenian pianist, composer, and improviser whose music resists classification into any one style. He takes elements of jazz, Armenian folk music, and even progressive metal and dubstep, and seamlessly blends them into compositions that are very fresh and wholly his own. The rhythms of his music are especially remarkable. We're going to look at Tigran's song Drip today and get to the bottom of some of the complex rhythms in the track. There's a studio version of Drip on his 2013 album Shadow Theater, but instead we're going to look at the live version of Tigran performing it with the Berklee College of Music Middle Eastern Fusion Ensemble. This version is substantially expanded with several new sections of music that have extremely interesting riffs and rhythms for us to look at. I would suggest watching that performance in full now if you haven't before, since it might be frustrating to listen to it in the small segments that will be presented in here, plus the analysis will make more sense. All of the sheet music you'll see in this video was carefully transcribed by me, completely by ear. So it's not official, but I can promise around 95% accuracy. Alright, enough chit chat. Let's dive in. The first section we're going to look at is actually one of the more intricate examples. The melody found here reappears several times, so I will call it our main melody. As you can see, it's actually rhythmically and melodically quite simple on its own. But this simplicity forms a nice balance with the complex rhythmic ideas that happen in the bass line or accompaniment. Each time the main melody reappears, there's either polyrhythmic or polymetric activity in what's happening underneath it. Those two terms are similar and can get easily confused, which is understandable. So, as a refresher, a polyrhythm is when there are two or more different numbers of notes happening in the same pulse beyond simple subdivision. As you can see in the diagram, basic triplets are technically polyrhythms, as are quintuplets and all other tuplets. But polyrhythms can get as complex as your imagination. You'll find multiple cool examples of polyrhythm in Drip. On the other hand, polymeters, simply put, are two different meters or time signatures happening at the same time. The beats remain constant, but their groupings differ, so the beats will get offset but eventually resync. Sometimes composers sort of cheat by rounding off the polymeter to fit neatly in the phrase of the main meter, and that's actually what Tigran does in the example of polymeter from Drip that we'll look at. But that's okay, it still definitely counts. Drip has some great polymetric action that we'll get to soon, but we're hopping back to polyrhythm first, with our first instance of the main melody. So let's look at what's actually happening in the polyrhythmic bass line here. Well, beneath our 4/4 main melody, we've got a very syncopated triplet layer. It repeats in a pattern that is 5 quarter notes long, which allows for 3 repetitions and 4 bars of 4/4, with 1 beat left over, which here is rounded off into the F sharp that brings us back around. Wait a minute. Actually, this is polyrhythm and polymeter at the same time. Crazy, right? Let's listen straight through. It repeats itself, so you'll hear it twice. So, to review, this section is polyrhythmic due to the triplet layer and the melody creating simultaneous rhythms of 3/8 per beat and 2/8 per beat, respectively. And it's polymetric because the pattern in the bass line suggests groups of 5 quarter notes while the rest of the ensemble is in a clear 4/4. Alright, now that all our definitions are squared away, we can move more quickly through the rest of the music. Next, we have a section that I call the breakdown. Let's listen to it before I talk this time. So, this breakdown is a through-composed unison line with the piano and the guitars, chock full of quintuplets, septuplets, offbeat triplets, and other intricate rhythms. Take a look at these 4 different but very similar rhythms that Tigran uses in here. The differences between these are extremely subtle, but it's exactly the mastery of these subtleties that make both the composition and performance of Drip so effective. The breakdown leads us right to a riff that has this angular, offbeat quintuplet rhythm, and it's very satisfying when paired with the drums playing right in the downbeat. Check it out. Tigran takes an improvised solo after that killer polyrhythmic riff. It's a fantastic solo for sure, but for the sake of time I must move on. In the meantime, I'll try and prepare you for what you're going to hear after, since it comes at lightning speed. There's 3 parts to the next chunk of music. First, our main melody comes back, but instead of that daunting triplet accompaniment, we have the offbeat quintuplet riff we just heard, making a lovely polyrhythmic combo. Then, after just 4 dramatic measures of that, we metrically modulate to a faster tempo and get a new riff in our new meter 15/16. After 8 measures of that riff, we return to the main melody, the 3rd and final time. It's still in 4/4, but the 15/16 riff continues, creating a wild polymeter. This is absolutely the climax of the piece. Every measure, the 2 rhythmic levels get off-sync by a single 16th note. So, after 7 measures, there's a 2/4 bar to round out the phrase and conclude the section. Did you catch all that? Well, either way, here it comes. I would be remiss in my duties of analyzing this performance of Drip to not mention the incredible Konakol solo at the tail end of the song. Konakol is an Indian tradition of performing rhythms vocally. I transcribed some of this solo as a bonus. Sadly, I could not find the soloist's name, but it is truly remarkable. Have a listen. And that concludes my analysis of Drip, and this is just one of Tigran Hamasyan's many masterworks. Between all the polyrhythms and polymeters, and even just the riffs when there's only 1 meter going on, this music is full of rhythmic wizardry and is truly one of a kind. Stay tuned for a full transcription of Drip coming soon on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.